This is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesiger. The Vatican issued a controversial message today saying that the Catholic Church cannot bless same-sex unions. This after priests had already begun giving those unions a blessing in some countries, including some parishes here in the United States. CBS News Vatican consultant says Pope Francis had gone further than any other pontiff in welcoming and accepting people with homosexual inclinations, but issued the statement after priests came to him for clarification.
Bless a union, we're actually putting them on a par with marriage. That for the church is outside what God intended in creation.
Father Figueiredo says the Vatican decree is a strong affirmation of the traditional church doctrine. Members of the LGBTQ community, advocates, and packed the steps of the state capitol in Montana today, urging lawmakers to vote down bills they say will lead to more discrimination. However, supporters of the bills argue they are necessary to protect religious freedoms. MTN's John Riley has more.
What do we want? Respect! When do we want it? Now! This is what democracy looks like!
At the rally, advocates pushed back against legislation that would require trans people to have surgery and obtain a court order to change their gender marker on their birth certificate, limit access to hormone treatment for trans youth, prevent trans youth from competing in high school sports programs, and Senate Bill 215, which would require a compelling governmental interest in order to prevent a person's expression of their religious beliefs.
We're always on the defensive. Every 2 years, we have to show up here and fight for our humanity and try to explain to a bunch of suits why we're in fact people.
Supporters of Senate Bill 215 say it won't lead to more discrimination and that the aim of the bill is to protect the rights of people of faith.
So how far does this go? Does it allow child abuse or spousal abuse, beatings, or blanket discrimination? No. All these things do have a compelling government interest to overrule your belief or your claim to a religious liberty there.
21 other states currently have similar religious freedom restoration laws, and there are examples of cases where those laws were cited in broad ways, such as a funeral home in Michigan firing a trans worker for not wearing a uniform that matched their biological gender on the ground of religious freedom. However, last year, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled against that funeral home.
The people who are pushing these bills forward know very well that this will lead to open discrimination against people who face it every single day. By passing these bills, we will make Montana a place where LGBT plus people are no longer welcome, and we have to defeat them because of that reason.
Similar legislation was proposed before the state legislature back in 2015. That legislation did fail, although narrowly. Only time will tell where the votes will fall on these bills and if they'll make it to Governor Gianforte's desk. Reporting in Helena, John Riley, MTN News.
Well, it was a frightening and brutal crime. A Laurel woman disappears following her shift at a Laurel casino and is later found brutally murdered. Today, the trial got underway for 24-year-old Diego Hernandez for the murder of Lori Bray. Q2's Shaquille Cozart has more.
It was a shocking crime that shook the city of Laurel. Now more than a year after Diego Hernandez was charged with the murder of Lori Bray, his trial is held here at Yellowstone County District Court in Billings. The 24-year-old Hernandez pleaded not guilty to one count of deliberate homicide. Today, prosecutors began laying out their case against him. Bray, who was 57 at the time of her death, disappeared after leaving the Cedar Ridge Casino in October of 2019. Her car was found later near Buffalo Trail and Laurel Airport Road. Her nude body was discovered about 3 miles from there in a wooded area. She had been strangled. Prosecutors say Bray gave Hernandez a ride home after her shift ended and that she was never seen alive again. Among the first witnesses called today after opening statements were Bray's son, who began to suspect something was wrong when his mother wasn't home. Bray's former boss also took the stand. She reported that there was an incident where Bray was hiding from a man in the casino office. The trial is expected to last several days and will have coverage throughout the week. Reporting in Billings, I'm Shaquille Cozart with MTN News.
Thanks, Shaquille. A motorcyclist who died over the weekend after he slammed into the back of a car in Billings West End has now been identified. 48-year-old John Althouse from Billings died Saturday afternoon. Yellowstone County Coroner Cliff Mahoney says Althouse died of multiple blunt force injuries. Police say the motorcycle heading east ran into the back of a sedan waiting to turn left at Monad Road and South 38th Street West. Well, the Billings elementary schools are in trouble with a projected budget deficit totaling $3.2 million predicted for the next school year. That cost is outpacing the school district's revenue, an issue school board trustees have been facing for years. Q2's Mitch Legge joins us now with more from tonight's Billings School Board meeting.
The Billings Elementary School budget is expected to be $3.1 million short in 2021. Part of the problem stems from a loss of 600 students last year, 400 of whom chose to go to homeschool during the pandemic. Billings School Superintendent Greg Upham said the loss of enrollment means that the district could lose $1.4 million in state funding. Another item working against the elementary budget is healthcare costs for teachers. The district usually estimates a 1% increase every year, and that 1% equates to a cost of about $1 million for the district. There's word now that healthcare costs could jump 10% next year. In 2019, Upham cut $4 million from the elementary budget, which included 37 full-time positions, in particular 11 interventionist teachers who help struggling students in reading and math. For the past 6 years, one-time only money has been used to shore up the elementary budget. Now that money is starting to run out, and if more cuts are needed, trustees don't see how they could be done without affecting students' learning.
This has got to stop. We've got to stop the bleeding. We can't. I was here when we cut all that $4.1 million, and that wasn't fluff. That is necessary. But we can't even touch that until we get our basics, income and outgo, and everything has got to be on the table to make this happen. I'm tired of doing this every year, and it's not getting any better.
Another topic of discussion at the board meeting was what scheduling will look like for the school day next year. Upham said administrators are deciding whether or not to keep the block scheduling and hope to have a plan nailed down sometime next month. In Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Thank you, Mitch. Also tonight, the board unanimously approved a measure to refinance the interest rates on the school district bonds. Accountants at D.A. Davidson found the district a lower interest rate that's expected to save taxpayers $6 million over the next 14 years. All right, turning to Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh. Ed, during this pandemic, a term we heard probably too much is the new normal. But when it comes to weathercasting, there's a new normal as well.
That's right. Yeah, we get some new normal temperatures. Every night we talk about the normal temperature for this time of the year, the average amount of rainfall we get in a season or snowfall. Now, usually that's based on a 30-year basis, and the 30-year basis is going to be adjusted as of the 1st of May. This happens on a routine basis every 10 years. So the new window is going to be 1991 to 2020. It'll give us a better idea of what we could be looking at. And it's more than just a rough average. It really takes in a lot of different things from 9,800 different weather stations around the country and even more from around the world. Not only does it give us a baseline to be able to talk about during the weathercast every night, but it also factors into all kinds of other decision-making processes as well. When those numbers come out, we'll share them with you. In the meantime, the forecast is up in a few minutes.
Thanks, Ed. Air travel for people trying to get in and out of Denver was a nightmare this weekend after that massive snowstorm that hit parts of Colorado and Wyoming. Parts of both those states still digging out for the storm, which dumped several feet of snow. About 8 flights that normally go from Billings to Denver were canceled because of the storm. Flights from Denver to Billings started taking off at 2 this afternoon, and the flight schedule should return to normal by tomorrow. Kevin Plone, Director of Aviation and Transit at the Billings Airport, says officials got the word out quickly about the storm, and he didn't hear of people who were stranded in Billings over the weekend.
A lot of people got out of town last week. Those trying to get back this weekend through Denver had some troubles and had to be diverted to other locations like Seattle or even Minneapolis and some of the other hubs that they could get through. So it was a little bit of a cluster trying to get back for some people, especially if they're going through Denver. But if they were going through the other markets, probably didn't have much trouble. We had some pretty good numbers over the weekend.
Well, minus the recent storm, Plone said there are more and more travelers flying in 2021. A year after being forced to go virtual with little attendance, one of Billings' signature summer events is back and open to a full house. The 49th Annual Symphony in the Park will take place Sunday, June 27th from 4 until 9 in the evening under the Symphony Shell there at Pioneer Park. The event will begin with an instrument petting zoo at 4 o'clock, with the Billings Community Band taking the stage at 5 o'clock. The signature event and crowd favorite, the Kids Conduction Contest, will start at 6:45 that night. The symphony is part of the 43rd Annual Summer Fair, which will run from Friday through Sunday of that weekend. Summer Fair, the largest arts and crafts festival in the region, will feature more than 100 artists, community groups, and food vendors.
Well, both organizations are pillars of art in the community, and we believe that joining forces together really makes a difference. And as we mentioned before, our missions are aligned. We want to help the community through the arts, the power of arts, and enrich lives through music.
But I think it's important too, we're both members of the Billings Cultural Partnership, and we're trying to create more partnerships within the community. And I think it's important for the two largest ones to show that we can build something together so other organizations can too.
That three-day festival is put on by the Billings Symphony Orchestra and Chorale and the Yellowstone Art Museum. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news on Q2, more COVID money is on its way to Montana, but where will it be going? We'll look to answer that question coming up next. And in sports, a household name on the Montana wrestling mats now making a name for himself nationally. We'll hear from Luke Weber coming up in just a bit.